The aggravating circumstances in this case are appalling. You've not only forfeited your right to live among us, you have forfeited your right to live at all.
Last phone call.
Okay.
Hi, thanks for watching another episode of Matchat. Now you might be wondering why I chose to emphasize the match in the chat. Well, let's take a look at the full picture, shall we? That's right. Today we have two guests. We've come to match at this location to chat about various political issues over Matchat. I think I should be a rapper with all these bars. Speaking of bars, we're talking about the death penalty. Today we have Cynthia G and Isha Penny on the show. It's nice to meet you two.
Economy, national well-being, and our own value.
And because we have two members on the show, we're going to designate Isha Penman as first speaker due to seniority on the show. So Isha, what are your views on the death penalty?
So I think death penalty is, there should be the death penalty simply because of moral issues and also like logistic issues with overcrowding in prisons and things like that.
And Cynthia?
Personally, I don't think the death penalty should still be in the United States. I think that the United States is such a modern country that by still having the death penalty, it goes against all the morals that the United States is based off of, and I don't understand why it's still here.
Right. So I've heard you two mention the moral aspect of the death penalty. I'd like you guys to go a little bit more in depth in that issue. What do you believe is the correct moral way to deal with criminals who deserve the death penalty under our legal system?
So I think specifically death penalty is like, I think it is moral in some cases. I don't think like, oh, if you killed one person, that's still bad, obviously, but I don't think you should get the death penalty for that. I think if you're killing, like, it sounds bad when I say it, but if you kill like at least 5 people, I mean, there's like a limit to, like, one could have been like self-defense or a mistake or I wasn't in the right state of mind, but you like have no really serious criminal record. I mean, that's one thing, to act in the heat of the moment and kill someone, but if you're killing multiple people or you're shooting up like a school or like a concert or wherever it is, if you're a mass shooter, if you're killing multiple people at the same time and you are in the right state of mind, like there's no mental illness or anything involved, I think that's something that personally I would categorize as evil. Either or, I don't know why we would continue feeding these people and letting them live in our state prisons instead of just getting rid of them, because I mean, then there's the possibility of escapes, there's a possibility of them getting out on parole. I mean, there's so many, I mean, it's very unlikely, but like, why keep them around and why waste money on them when they're already killing so many people?
And how would you respond to that?
I feel like the main issue that I want to talk about is that, like, as a country, we seem to stigmatize like murder, and we don't stand for murder and we don't stand for killing people. So what I don't understand is how our justice system is not okay with other people killing other people, but we're okay with the government killing people. I think one of the things that Isha mentioned about like drawing a line where you either have life in prison or you have the death penalty, it's really hard to draw, especially right now. I think so much of the death penalty is really subjective to the point where it targets like minorities and low income communities, and I do understand that part of that is because of their circumstances and because minorities tend to like live in circumstances in which there's a lot of crime. But I think that like the death penalty really depends on the prosecutor, and it really depends on an individual's subjective opinion towards another criminal. And so when there's no objective standard to measure like when someone should be on death row or whether or not they just go on life without parole. Like it's not really fair, and I don't think that should still be in our institutions.
So, would you suggest an alternative?
I either think that there should be like a common standard to measure like death row on, even though I think that's really hard because, like Isha mentioned, there's so many factors. There's like the mental state, there's the number of people who were killed, there's like the entire circumstance, so it's really hard to have like a certain like balancing factor. So for me, I feel like even though we are spending money on these criminals who are just gonna die in jail, I think it means a lot more to me to have them suffer in jail rather than give them that easy way out through death.
So it's more of an ideological reason.
Yeah.
And how would you respond to that?
So I think going on to the prison side of things, majority of criminals who do get life sentences are in state prisons. And state prisons are known for having extremely high recidivism rates in like the 50s, 60s, and 70s, depending on the state, and being at like 150 to 170% capacity. They're also extremely expensive. They're like 75,000. One of the most expensive was like 75,000 per day per criminal. So you're putting taxpayer dollars into those people. It doesn't matter who they are, if it's a petty crime or it's a life sentence, you're putting money into them. But also the overcrowding thing, this has caused like multiple like health code violations. There was one person who didn't get proper treatment, even though that they were pregnant and that they didn't get any proper care or anything. There was one person who had like his eye infection and was never properly treated. There's so many issues with our prison system today, and I think like if you're looking at like a more moral standpoint, like why are we doing the same thing? We like frown upon killing people, but why do we do the same thing to criminals by using the death penalty? Well, then you're just putting them in a much worse state in prisons because like that's completely unsafe for your health. So you're actually, I wouldn't say torturing, but it's a lot more painful to be in prisons than it is to be be on death row. And I think, especially with like the overcrowding of prisons, like if I know it's like very subjective, like okay, where do we draw the line, and like that definitely is more discussion, but I don't think we should get rid of it completely. I think like I'm not going like, oh yeah, the what we have right now is fine. I think we should reform it. So that like it's very clear, like okay, this person killed 12 people and they were in the right state of mind. They definitely get the death penalty. Something like that, something very, very clear, like anyone would be like, okay, yeah, I guess kind of, yeah, they would get the death penalty, like that's a pretty inexcusable crime. Then they would be on death row and not be in life. So.
Yeah, I mean, I doubt anyone who kills 12 people would be in the right state of mind. But yeah, you guys mentioned something about the economical aspect of the death penalty, how it might be more expensive to put someone on the death penalty instead of keeping them in prison for life. What do you believe, or do you believe that the economic aspect should play a role into making this decision?
I definitely think so, because these are taxpayer dollars, right? We want to make sure that the taxes people pay are used for necessary items and reasonable things. Currently, with what we have right now, death penalty is legal in about 30 states, I think. And it's actually currently more expensive to be on death row than it is to be life sentenced. But there are certain aspects because to finally, I mean, they have you have to wait several years on death row to actually be killed. The reason for this is because there's so many processes and stuff they have to go through to like actually follow through the whole process. It's very long. There's so much like paperwork, this and that. And so my thing is reform it so that it's a shorter process. You expedite the process so it doesn't cost as much. Because the costs come from keeping them alive during that whole time while we wait for them to die. So that's really where the costs come from. And I think if we expedite that process, it would be cheaper to be on death row than life sentence.
So I do think that economics should play like a certain role in the entire debate about the death penalty. But I also think that, like Isha mentioned, sometimes it's more painful to be in jail than to just be put to death. And I think that's what a lot of people want. And that's what a lot of people who are against the death penalty want. Because they want the convicts to suffer, and they want them to spend the rest of their life waiting in jail to die. And I think for people who commit those horrendous crimes, I think they deserve that instead of just getting off easy and being put to death. There was like one more thing, I just completely forgot. What did I want to talk about?
So you mentioned something that it's more suffering to keep them alive in jail than it is to give them an easy way out per se. So would that be sort of the moral aspect that you believe in, where you want them to pay for their crimes in a sense where they have to live with that guilt and that suffering? Or?
Yeah, like I think it's really important for these convicts to like really sit there and to think about what they've done throughout their entire lifetime and to reflect back on like their actions and to realize that they had their entire life in front of them and now they're just sitting in jail rotting away. The one thing that I did want to talk about was expediting the process. I actually don't think that we should quicken the process, even if it does save money, because I think the reason why a lot of people are on death row for like 10, 11 years is because they have multiple opportunities to challenge their death row conviction and to get off of death row. And I was talking to a public defender who works in death row, and she was talking about how like it takes years sometimes for these like challenges to like actually proceed and get a ruling on. And if you want to tackle the issue from like 3 or 4 different ways to not get killed, you need that time. And so even if it does save that money, like if we're talking about someone's life right now, I think they should get like those years to really try their best to get out of it.
A quick thing. So first thing is, oh god, I forgot the first thing. We'll go to the second thing. So one thing is when you're, oh yeah, I remember my first thing. So first thing is, there's also a bit of subjectivity. Is do you want them to rot in jail for the rest of their life, or do you want them dead on the spot? So I feel like then there should be, because it differs for each person. Like I may be like, oh, I want them dead on the spot. I want them to die. Like I don't even want them alive. Like I want them gone. Other people might say, oh no, I want them to suffer a long time in jail. I want them to be in life in jail. You know, something like that. And I think then that takes into account like, okay, what does the victim's family want? Like what do they want to happen? And then I feel like then okay, then maybe you have to take into account their consideration of, oh, do you get the option? Do you want life sentence or do you want death penalty? Then you get like that type of subjectivity into there. That's one thing. Second thing is that there's, whether they're criminals or not, there's still human rights that every human has as long as they're alive, and this is something that's international. And actually, these prisons are on like the border of violating those human rights. And I think then, like now, we're just committing more crimes by violating. I keep saying human rights, but violating what they're entitled to as humans, whether they're criminals or not, by putting them in prisons that are not up to standards and not doing the bare minimum of what they should. But then that's a whole other issue, like, okay, now we gotta reform our prisons and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just some thoughts.
So, because we're running out of time, would you like to have any final thoughts about the death penalty? Anything we've discussed or anything that we might have missed out?
I think, again, like, it's all very subjective. Like what does the victim's family want? Like, is it death penalty? Is it life? Is it you want them to die quickly or do you want them to suffer? I think the human rights violations should definitely be taken into account, because if our prison system is something like Norway, where they have like an amazing prison system with really, really low recidivism rates, this would be a very, very different conversation we're having. But if our prison system is not very, or state prison systems in general are not very great, they're known for violating many human rights, and they're not up to the standards they should be at. So I definitely think that if we're trying to look at criminals still as people, then like, okay, so where, like, do we put them here? Is this like still, do they deserve this? And now it goes to like a whole different discussion. So I definitely think it's hard.
Yeah, I think that a lot of my views around the death penalty, it has to do with, like, right now I'm not in a state of mind where I understand where victims' families come from, and so I'm thinking through it at a completely, like, logical and rational place of mind. but I understand that like if it was my family, if it was my parents, like if it was anyone close to me that I really loved who were killed, like I feel like I would think a lot differently. I would have completely different views. So like Isha said, I do think it's really like a really touchy subject and a really subjective subject because it depends on like where you stand like right at the moment, because I feel like I would change as circumstances change, and I feel like other people would too.
All right. Thank you very much for sharing your perspectives today. If you have any ideas for future topics or you'd like to come on the show, please contact us. Other than that, have a very nice day.
Oh my god.
Hello? Oh shoot. Death row? Man, that's too harsh. Why'd you use the last call on me? Sorry man, can't break you out. I'm out of the country. Yeah, they deported me. Yo, hold up. Sorry to leave you so soon, but I gotta shoot my friend an important text. Peace.